Hello all and welcome to the session on nested for loops in C language. Learning outcomes. At the end of the session, the students will be able to understand working of nested for loops and write C programs using nested for loops. Nested loops. The topics to be covered in this video will be what is a nested loop, types of nested loops, working of the nested loops, and some of the example programs to practice regarding the nested loops. So first topic, what are nested loops? A nested loop is actually a loop inside another loop. The inner loop executes completely for each iteration of the outer loop. For example, the syntax of a for loop is like first initialization condition is there, that is initialization is done. After that the condition is checked. If the condition is true, the program enters the whatever the code is written inside the curly brackets. After that, once the execution is done, it goes to the increment or decrement operation. Next, again second time the condition is checked. If the condition is true, again the for loop statements or code is executed. Again it goes to the increment or decrement operation. Once the condition is false, the program comes or the execution comes outside the for loop or the curly brackets of the for loop. In nested for loops, we are having one for loop inside another for loop. So the inside one is called as inner loop and the outside one we can call it as the outer for loop. So in this case, first the initialization of the outer for loop will take place. After that, the condition is checked. If the condition is true, the execution enters the outer loop statements. After that, the initialization for inner for loop will take place. Next, the condition for the inner for loop will be checked. If the condition is true, the inner for loop statements will be executed. Next, it will go to the increment or decrement operation of the inner for loop. After that, the condition for the inner for loop is again changed. So this process will repeat until the inner for loop condition is false. Once the inner for loop condition gets false, the program will go to the increment or decrement operation of the outer for loop. After that operation, again the condition for the inner for loop will be checked. If the condition for the inner for loop is true, again the if the condition for the outer for loop is true, again the inner for loop will get executed. So as long as the condition for the inner for loop is true, outer for loop is true, the inner loop will get executed. Once the condition of the outer for loop is false, the execution will come out of the loop. So in this way, the inner loop executes one time completely for each iteration of the outer loop. Now, types of nested loops. Nested loops can be taken not only for loop but also while loop, do while loop, or for mixed loops like while with for loop or while with do while loop and vice versa. Working of nested for loops. We have taken an example program for printing a pattern using nested for loop. So whatever nested for loop conditions or working we have seen just now, the same we will apply to generate the following pattern. In these patterns, stars are printed, like a star shape is printed. There are totally 3 rows and 3 columns. In the first row, 1 star is there. In the second row, 2 stars. In the third row, 3 stars. The same pattern can be continued up to 4, 5 or whatever n number of stars which can be taken from the user. So this is the sample program for the working of nested for loop. So step by step we will see the execution of these inner and outer for loops and how the pattern is getting printed. Firstly, with stdio.h, that is we are including the standard input output file. Then in the main function we have declared the I and j variables, integer variables. Now we are having one for loop, that is outer, which is designed with the yellow rectangle, and for inner loop we are having the red rectangle. In first place, initialization will take place as discussed previously. So I is equal to 1. So one value is assigned to the variable I. Next, the condition will be checked as 1 is less than or equal to 3. Now the program execution will enter into the for loop, outer loop statements, that is it will enter the inner loop. In the inner loop, again initialization will take place. So we have initialized one value to the j variable. Next, the condition for inner loop will be checked. Now as I is 1 and j is 1, so 1 less than or equal to 1, the condition is true. So it will go and execute the statements of the inner for loop. So there printf star is printed, so 1 star will get printed. Next, the condition will again be checked for inner loop. Now j plus plus, so j value will be incremented by 1, j will become 2. Now as 2 is less than or equal to 1, the inner loop condition fails. So it will come out of the inner for loop, and whatever remaining outer for loop statements are there, they will get executed. So we have new line, so we have taken new line for the next row. So printf \n will go get us to the new line. After that, the increment or decrement operation for the outer for loop will take place. Now I will become I plus plus, so the value of I will become 2. As again 2 is less than or equal to 3, the condition is true. So again it will go to the inner for loop. Now j initialization will take place, j is 1. Now 1 is less than or equal to 2, again the condition for inner for loop is true. So again the star will get printed. Next, j plus plus, j will become 2. So 2 is less than or equal to 2, again the second star will printed. So for the next execution we will have 2 stars on the second row. Next, j will become 3, the condition fails as I is still 2 and 3 is not less than or equal to 2. So we'll come out of the inner for loop and we are having \m. So again our execution will go to the flow will go to the third row, that is new line. At the new line, now again it will go to the condition or increment of the outer for loop. Now the value of I will again increment by 1, so we will have I is equal to 3. As 3 is less than or equal to 3, the condition is true. So again the same execution will repeat. J will become 1. As 1 is less than or equal to 3, the star will get printed. J plus plus, so j will become 2, and in the same way j will become 3. So in the third row we will have 3 stars side by side of each other. Next, j will become 4, I4, J4, so condition fails. So it will come out of both the inner for loop as well as the outer for loop, and the code will get executed and this pattern will get printed. As I told you, if we want to extend the number of rows, we have to just give the condition for the outer for loop where I less than or equal to 3 is written. If we want the pattern for 5 rows, we can give I less than or equal to 5. If you want for whatever rows the user wants to enter, so you can take one more variable n and we can give the condition I less than or equal to n. So many times the same program can be repeated and different patterns can be generated for whatever the user wants to enter. Next, example 2, we are having this pattern which we want to print. So the students can pause the program and write the code for this and then check the code. Now in this pattern, instead of stars, we are printing the number of name of the rows, like first row, then in the second row 2 we are having, in the third row 3 we are having. So instead of printing stars, we are printing the number of rows or name of the row. So only one change you have to make, where we have written in the previous code printf star, instead of that we have to print I, because I we have taken for rows and j we have taken for columns. So only one small change you can make and generate different patterns. Again, one more example is there, a new pattern but of the same type is there. So the students can pause the video and write a code for this and then check their code. So here the difference between this example 3 and example 2 is that in example 2 we have printed the rows. Here we are printing columns like first, second, third, 1, 1, 2 and 1, 2, 3. So again one small change we have to do in the code. In previous code where we have written printf %di, instead of that we have to write printf %dj. J I have highlighted with red color. So instead of I, that is rows, we are printing j, that is columns. So by making small changes we can generate different types of patterns using nested for loop. We can generate the same patterns using nested while loops as well as nested do while loops. Some of the best practices, always the loops are to be kept simple and readable. The proper indentation should be maintained in between the outer loops and inner loops for clarity, and unnecessary nesting is avoided. That is, the nesting of loops should be used only as and when required. Some of the real world applications for nested loops are in generating patterns, different type of patterns which we have seen. Then matrix operations like addition of matrices, multiplication of matrices, we can use the nested loops. It can be for loop, it can be while loop for the operations, and it can be also used in game development where grid based logic is there. So conclusion, we are having that nested for loops are powerful, or nested loops in total are powerful. They can be used for generating different patterns, grid based games, but should be used wisely to ensure efficiency. These are some of the references. Thank you.